Welcome to the Health Rising podcast, where we empower you along your health journey. I'm your host, Dr. Jordan Salmon, and together we'll explore the steps to greater health, hope, and happiness. Let's rise together. Welcome back to the Health Rising podcast. I'm Dr. Salmon. Excited to be here and talk about some important things to help us in our health journey. So, as you'll recall, we were talking about the Health Rising pathway. So last week we talked about having a desire for change and letting that desire guide us on our journey to figure out what things we want to work on, how we can change, thinking about what we want to be different, and just not judging ourselves for our actions, but tuning in to some of the things that we might be doing that are contributing to where our current health is and having a desire to change those things. So, once you've figured out kind of where you want to go because you recognize I don't like this aspect, this scenario, this how I feel, these anxious thoughts, or I'm I'm don't have as much energy as I want. I'm not sleeping as well as I want. Now you can start to move to the next step, which is decide. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, making a decision on the health rising pathway is a critical step to moving in a different direction. So, now making a decision means that we are going to be very concrete. So, we are deciding something about a situation. So, one of the examples I think that we can use on today's podcast is you are frustrated because you feel really anxious every time you go home from work or go to work because of all of the traffic. And that just causes a lot of anxiety for you. Get frustrated and then you end up going to work, and at work you spend time thinking about how frustrating your drive was. And when you come home from work, you are frustrated and getting upset with your loved ones about how it took forever for you to get home. So, if we're going to make a decision to change this specific health scenario, a decision would be a very specific, actionable step that we would take. So, we wouldn't decide to be less anxious. That is what we desire, right? That's our vision for what we're trying to improve. A decision would be to have an actionable step that we can take in order to improve our health for that scenario. And it's important for us to remember, if you go back to a prior episode, we talked about the two contrasting realities that are true for everything in life, where we have aspects that are out of our control. So, what is out of our control in this scenario is the result of those anxious thoughts. So, our palms may get sweaty, we may have our heart racing. Also, what is out of our control is the traffic. We don't control how many people are on the road. We don't control the weather. We don't control how, if there was a car accident or many other things that contribute to delays, traffic delays. So all of those are out of your control. And those exist at the same time as what is within your control, which is your response to that scenario. The thoughts that you have in your mind because of that scenario. So you could have two individuals, one person who, let's say there's a car accident and the car accident has caused a traffic delay. And one person may think, great, now I'm going to be extra late. That individual will likely have a lot more anxiety and will be much more frustrated with the situation. While another person might try and improve their thinking pattern and think something such as, I'm so glad that I wasn't in that car accident. I hope everyone is okay. And that will bring a sense of calm and relief to that individual. And these thoughts are constantly going on in our minds. Your brain is a thinking machine. That's what it does. Its job is to think, and it will continually do so all the time, constantly. And the more that you practice controlling those thoughts and improving those thoughts, the stronger your brain power will get. Kind of like a muscle. I like to think of it as a muscle that your brain, the thinking patterns are that muscle. And the more that you exercise and control the thinking patterns, especially with unfortunate situations, the stronger your thinking patterns will become and the greater your capacity to move forward in the face of challenging situations. So, we're going to make a decision and we need to have specific things to decide about. So, how will we address this scenario? But you need to have a specific actionable step that you will take in that scenario in order to change the outcome. Because right now, you're getting frustrated. You're not enjoying the experience, and we're trying to improve your health for that particular scenario. So, we need to have options to consider. You cannot decide if there are not options or actionable options for you to engage in. So, a decision would not be to not be so anxious or just calm down, just stop freaking out, right? Those are all visions. That's what we're trying to accomplish. That's what we desire, okay? Now, when we're at the decide stage, we need to have an identifiable action step that we can take. And there are many things that we can, that, a physician will help you with these things. If you need help, you can find a lot of resources online. And so, what in this particular scenario, our decision options may be to consider things that you could do when you are faced with increased traffic on the road. So, your options may be I could listen to some music, calming music. I could roll down my window and enjoy the weather. I could call a friend or a loved one and talk about how their day is going, or listen to a podcast or many other things. And you can consider the options and then decide on one. And that is what decide is all about. Now, let's go to the motivation. There's a lot of misconceptions about motivation, especially when we're dealing with something. I chose a scenario that's fairly simple and easy. But some of our health challenges are extremely complex and multiple facets are contributing to our situation. And that's very difficult. And so when we're trying to discover a motivation, I think there's just some misconceptions about what motivation really means. And people think about motivation as, you know, pump up songs and, I just got to get motivated. I just got to find it, right? I just don't have it and I need to find it. Motivation is a reason behind your actions. It is your why. Motivation is why you perform actions. And if you don't know what your why is, then it will be very difficult to continue on something that is uncomfortable, that is difficult, that is different from what you are used to. So you need to know why you are deciding to do something different. And there's two common motivations that we think about. You have extrinsic, that is all the motivators that are outside of you, money, to get attention from other people, to obtain some reward, or to avoid some kind of a punishment. Those are all extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is within you. That is what drives you to feel peaceful, to enjoy life, feel stronger, to have a greater sense of happiness and hope in your life. And there have been some studies that have pointed to what we call an undermining effect. That when we have external rewards as a motivator, that then our enduring motivation, that intrinsic motivation, is undermined or diminished. So if we attempt to motivate ourselves by something that's extrinsic, such as I want someone to pay attention to me, so I'm going to try and lose weight, that will be very short lived motivation. Your motivation needs to be an intrinsic motivation to endure through the trials, through the challenges, through the struggle of making a change. And if your motivation is not, then it will be hard to endure. So, for example, I see it very frequently that individuals will have their motivation to lose weight by a specific date for a specific event, maybe for a wedding or some big celebration, and they want to lose the weight. And if that's what you desire to do, then okay. But this is going to be most likely a short lived weight loss, and that weight will come back after the wedding date. So your motivation, while it may start out as extrinsic and that can be okay in some scenarios, but you need to find your why. You need to look inside and determine, why are you doing this? What is your real motivation? And sometimes we even have motivation that we think is intrinsic. I'm doing it for the right reasons, right? I want to be able to look at myself and love myself because I don't love myself, or I don't respect myself because I'm fat and I don't like that. Now this is extrinsic motivation, right? Because you are stepping outside of yourself and judging yourself. And so now it's almost as if there is someone outside of you, which is yourself, who doesn't love you. And again, you're trying to get them to love yourself. So your motivation needs to just be because you are worth it. You are amazing. And you deserve to have a good life, to feel happy and to enjoy every moment. And you are worth it. You're already worth it. You are important. And this is before you even have done anything. You're amazing. And the reason that you can engage in this decision and make these changes is not so that you can love yourself, but because you already do. You're already worth it. You're already amazing. So why not give yourself the best and feel the best that you can possibly feel? That kind of motivation will endure the test of time. Now, some of you might be saying, okay, Dr. Salmon, that sounds great, but I'm not there. You don't know me, and I don't know you, and that's okay. But this is where I hope we can eventually get to. And this is the motivation that I hope we can find in our process, in this journey. And as you begin to start making changes and start seeing how capable you really are, and challenge maybe some of your own disbelief in yourself and start doing things that you didn't think you could do, this motivation will come and you will begin to realize how amazing you really are. So, determining your why is your motivation. What is your internal motivation? Then you would go on to your what. Your what is going to be, what specifically are you going to change? What are the actions that you're going to take? So this would be, specifically in this scenario, I'm going to take actions to perform, to have what? So our individual who was on the road that we're trying to help them with their anxiety, what is going to happen is I'm going to perform actions that lower my anxiety levels because I am awesome and I deserve that. And I want that in my life. I want that peace. Okay, this is good. So your what is, what specifically are we trying to accomplish? Lowered anxiety levels, to improve that anxiousness, that calmness. And frequently what we see is people will try and skip this step and they'll jump to how. And this is what you see on social media, right? how do you improve your anxiety levels? And everyone tells you you got to eat this special fruit, or you've got to perform this specific action, or you've got to listen to this specific thing, or do this particular action, right? What they're telling you is how, and how is not a great way to go forward, because how changes based on the scenario, based on the individual, based on so many different factors. So the how you accomplish your what is whatever way works for you. And this will take time. This will take practice. So we talked about some of the how examples, right? You could listen to music in order to what? To lower anxiety levels. You could listen to a podcast in order to what? Lower anxiety levels. And there are many different hows. There is not one right answer. The right answer is whatever works for you. Okay? And your how may be different than someone else's how. And so stop trying to get your what by performing the same how as someone else and then getting frustrated because it's not working. Knowing your what is critical so that then you can perform multiple different hows or debate between multiple different hows and attempt them and try them out. So you'll make that decision and then you'll again we'll move forward through this process, but it's important to kind of take some time to think about this specific step, that the decide process, and being specific in what you are going to do. And that what, right, is that what is what you're trying to accomplish, and how you'll do it is going to change. And there's a million different answers for how. So don't get bent out of shape over this one. Now, we've spent a lot of time just thinking about our health and thinking about things we'd want to change and thinking about what we want to change. And now we're trying to get into how we're going to actually implement these changes. And it's kind of a lot of effort. And you might say, Dr. Salmon, shouldn't I just do this? And of course we want to do it. But what are you going to do? And how are you going to actually make that happen? And how are we going to face all the challenges and the setbacks that are going to come in that process? So taking time to work through this in your mind, and then what we're going to do now is actually put this into words, into a statement, into a goal of some sort. And that is a really valuable process to do whenever we're trying to create something new. If you think about a movie, before they create a movie, they always have a screenplay that runs through what this movie is going to be about and why it's going to be successful. And if you're starting a new business, first thing you're going to do is have a business plan. What are you doing? How are you actually making money? How will this be successful? And having the words actually written down is a critical step to improving your chances of success. They say 80 to 90% of New Year's resolutions fail. I would submit because we didn't take enough of the time beforehand to really write it out and think about all of the components of how we can really make this work. So, one of the great ways that we can go about putting these words onto paper and actually creating this new, healthier version of ourselves is using what we call an implementation intention statement. And this is you committing to yourself about this specific scenario and deciding what you would do differently. So, this individual who gets frustrated with the traffic on the road would say, "This, I get anxious every time I go on the road. So, my what is I want to lower my anxiety levels and I want to feel more calm and at peace despite this craziness that's going on. So how will you accomplish this? For me, I'm going to listen to my favorite song. It's a nice calming song that for me helps calm my nerves and just helps me find peace in struggling situations. That's great. That sounds like a great option for you. So then your implementation or intention statement would go something like this. When I'm on the road and faced with the anxiousness of bad traffic, I will put on my song on the radio. How do you do that? Maybe you have a Bluetooth, right? Being very specific about how you're going to accomplish this task and trying to lower the barriers. So, for example, in my current car, my phone, or in one of my cars, my wife's car, my phone does not connect to the speakers on the car. But I could listen to the music just from my phone. So I could do that. Or I could say, you know what? I need to figure out a way to get it on my phone. So I can connect my phone to the Bluetooth, or I could get a plug in order to plug it in so that then I can make sure that I'm able to do that, right? Having a very specific plan to overcome the barriers to accomplishing your how in order to obtain your what. Having an intention statement is a critical step. There have been some great studies that have shown that just the simple act of writing out your intention statement, being very specific and writing it out, that of exactly what you will do in that specific scenario with all those that environment will help you to engage in that behavior more consistently and obtain the desired result, right? The desired what more consistently. And this is a critical step. You do this, and then you have a time for accountability, a time for review. And we'll get to that in the future. But having, uh, you know, making that decision, all of this is the planning phase. It's going through all of the different potential action options that you can perform for a specific scenario. So let's talk about weight loss because that's something that I see a lot of patients struggling with. And let's talk about potential scenarios that could help you with weight loss specifically when you are on this step to decide. So let's say you've gone through that desire process, right? And you desire to have improved energy levels and you decide that you're overweight and you think that losing weight will improve those energy levels. Now that's very possible. So, in order to decide, you would go through, right? You determine your why, right? So you get really clear on that and have a very specific why. You know, what is your why? And knowing why you're trying to do something different in order to have those energy levels is really critical. So if you just want to lose the weight because that's cool or because your doctor told you to, then you're probably not going to do it. And that's okay, then just don't do it. But if you have a really good why, a really good motivation, then you can move forward. And you talk about your what. So what are you going to do? Lose weight? No. No, that's your why, right? That's part of I guess not really your why. It's part of your desire, that vision for what you're trying to improve in your health is a lower weight. So then what is the what? Your what is going to be a specific action that you would need to take in order to consistently obtain the vision that you're aiming for. So, improved energy levels and lower weight. So, what needs to happen? And unfortunately, for this scenario, there's actually a lot of different answers that could all be a what. And each of these are really just centered around the idea that calories, right? So food has calories, which is the energy that you gain from the food. So as long as you're burning as much energy as you're consuming, then you won't be gaining weight because you're using all of those calories. And when you're consuming more calories than your body needs, then those calories will go, generally that food will be put into fat. It's kind of a maybe a simple way, very oversimplified, but easy way to conceptualize this concept. And so many of the potential what's that we talk about, would be centered around this concept of calorie consumption. So, potential answer would be, okay, we're going to eat less calories by eating more vegetables, drinking more water, eating smaller portions, eating less calorie dense foods, avoiding emotional stress or boredom eating, drinking less calories. And and you can go on and on. There's other potential answers. Or you can go to the other side where you're trying to increase your calorie energy use. So exercising more regularly. But let's say you decide, okay, I want to focus on getting less calories in. Okay, great. So then what specifically are you going to do? So you decide, I'm going to drink more water. Okay, now that is also another what, right? What needs to happen? Well, drinking more water in order to feel more full, in order to help me so that I don't feel so hungry and that I can make sure that when I am hungry, that I'm actually hungry and that it's not just thirst. And so those are great what's. Now, how will you get more water in your diet, right? Or in your day? And there's a million different answers for how you can accomplish this. So you could carry a water bottle with you all the time. You could have a reminder on your phone so that you stand up and go get a drink from a drinking fountain or from some other water source. You could have a friend who helps you out and calls you, and says, hey, did you get enough water today? And they call you every day at lunchtime. Or you could, again, there's, on and on and on. Anyway, so there's lots of hows for how you can get more water in your diet. Let's say that your goal is to decrease your calorie intake. Now, this again, you would be very specific and you would start to observe, okay, well, when do I get extra calories? Maybe you're snacking late at night. Maybe you're snacking in between meals. Maybe you're always eating in excess at every meal. Maybe you're always eating desserts. Maybe you're stress eating or eating because you're emotional or eating because you're frustrated or bored or whatever other emotion, and you have turned to food as a source of comfort or as a source of distraction from these other emotions and other things. So each one of those can be a what. And then you would determine how to accomplish that. Okay, so when I feel bored, I typically will stand up and I'll go to the refrigerator and open the fridge and then I just start eating. Or I go to the pantry or the snack cupboard and I'll start eating a snack. Okay. So you're now identifying a barrier, right? Something that you engage in regularly and that you're trying to change. So now you would come up with a how. Okay, so how can we change that? How do we get less snacking when you are emotional or frustrated or bored? And one of the ways I like to talk about it is really just figure out, okay, well, what will actually help address those concerns? If you're bored, what can you do that can actually help you not be so bored? And maybe you can start thinking of things that you could do, things that you enjoy engaging in, and you can start one of those new activities. And again, there are a million different hows. Don't get bogged down by this. Come up with a few possible answers and then decide on one and go forward with it. Don't worry so much about whether or not it will get you to the desired vision of what you're hoping to accomplish, right? Just come up with a how and start doing it. And that's kind of what we'll talk about on our next podcast. We'll get into more of the do of, that's our next step, right? We do things. So, just to recap, kind of the important things about this step in deciding is a decision between specific actionable steps. We make an actionable goal, making sure that we know our why that we're going to do this and what we're specifically trying to accomplish, and then being okay with multiple different answers for how we'll do it, but we settle on one. How will we actually accomplish this mission? this goal, this journey. And then you make your decision. You decide, this is what I'm going to do. Great. Now put it to pen and paper. Write out your intention statement or record yourself in a video, some kind of way that you can be accountable that this is what you're committing to, that this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to move forward, and being very specific about how often you'll do it, right? So if you know that it's like triggered by an emotional thing, the emotional situation where whenever you're feeling strong emotions, you turn to food, then you could say, okay, when I'm feeling really frustrated because of work, or when I'm feeling bored, I'll go out and I'll go for a walk. That is a great how of something you could do to deal with your boredom instead of turning to food. And that can be a means of helping you lose weight and gain energy. And that's your goal. And you have that vision of this is what I'm doing in order to obtain a specific vision, a specific health outcome that I really want in my life. And one of the things that early in my career I used to think about was we would talk about people who were going to go to the grocery store, and to help them lose weight, they suggested that you would park further away and walk into the grocery store. Now, the amount of calories that you would actually lose from that how, right? This is a specific how. The amount of calories is very minimal. And I used to think that that would be almost useless. But what I didn't recognize was the power of that vision, the power of that motivation, right? They had a why. They had a desire to obtain a specific result, and they were working on a how of trying to get there. And that one how is unlikely to yield significant weight loss, right? Parking further away from the grocery store and walking in, let's say you go to the grocery store once, twice a week, it's just really not going to give you it's not going to burn enough calories to really provide significant weight loss. But that vision, that desire, that mindset, I guess is the right word, having the mindset that you're willing to do different things and step out of your comfort zone and try new things in order to obtain a different result, that will give you the result. Parking further away from the grocery store, no, that's not going to do it. But the vision that you have and the willingness that you have to engage in new behaviors and try things, and knowing that that may not work, or you may do that in addition to other things, right? That having that kind of a vision and that kind of motivation behind your actions, that's what will lead to the end result, the improved health, a much better health situation. Send me emails if you have questions about, how this would look like, or how we would actually make, if you have specific questions about deciding and intention statements, right? So intention statements are a beautiful thing, and they can provide significant power to helping you overcome yourself, because a lot of times we are our own worst enemies, right? We talked about the individuals who, we condemn ourselves. Man, if I could just go on for 1 second, stop doing that, right? Treat yourself, step outside yourself, right? So if you consider yourself that you are always with yourself, would you want to always be with someone who is as critical with yourself as you are? Would you keep that friend around? So if you are treating yourself poorly, talking down to yourself, giving yourself labels, and saying how pathetic you are, or fat you are, or how you'll never accomplish anything and you're such a loser, or whatever else you say to yourself, please stop. Just we don't need that. You don't need that. That's not helping you. It's not motivating you, and it's not going to do you any good. So if you wouldn't want that friend to be with you all the time putting you down, then please don't be that friend to yourself. Be your own biggest cheerleader. You can do this. You can make changes. You can improve your health. You can obtain a new health that will be liberating, powerful, and you will enjoy life to a new degree. I hope that's what you discover. I hope that's what you find. Please be kind to yourself. Do not put yourself down. Just cheer yourself on in this journey. You may not believe in yourself, and that's okay. But at least have that desire. Let that desire to change work in you so that then you continue forward. Work on your motivation, right? Ask yourself why. Why are you doing this? And don't do it for the wrong reasons. Otherwise, it's not going to last. And make your decision, write it down, and then let's move forward. Today, we talked about deciding, right? Putting pen to paper. That is a critical step. Next, we'll talk about do. And that is where the rubber meets the road, right? So you've got to actually get on your feet and make things happen. So how do we do that? We'll talk about that next week. Thank you for tuning in. I hope this was helpful, that you can kind of start seeing. I'm trying to take it, step by step in this process and help you recognize some of the things that can help you on each step of the process, that hopefully you don't get caught up on these things, but we're going to move forward. Hope this is helpful. I'm excited about it. And thanks for tuning in. We'll talk next week. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Health Rising podcast. I practice as a direct primary care physician in the Houston, Texas area. You can read about my blog and learn more about direct primary care at healthrisingdpc.com. If you have any questions or thoughts you'd like to share, feel free to message me on X or on Instagram at healthrisingdpc. Until next time, remember to choose health and be kind to yourself. This podcast serves solely for educational purposes. The information provided here is not intended to be medical advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish a doctor-patient relationship between the host, guests, or anyone associated with the podcast and the listener. For personalized medical advice tailored to your specific health concerns, please consult your own family physician. Any interactions with patients or experiences shared in this podcast have been altered to ensure confidentiality and comply with HIPAA regulations. Names, genders, diagnoses, and any potentially identifiable information have been modified to protect the privacy of individuals. By continuing to listen to the Health Rising podcast, you acknowledge and agree to these terms.